Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to my second podcast. My name is Adamantium, and I'll be with you for the next hour, dispelling myths about TZM, TVP, and an RBE. I do apologise for my voice. I'm just recovering from the flu, so I do apologise if I get croaky later on. But anyway, just to give a couple of very brief updates. Since the official January 26th release of Zeitgeist Moving Forward, it has now reached a view count of 2,455,899 views. So well done, everyone. But that doesn't mean that our job's over, okay? We need to keep getting this out there. Other than that, the other update I would have is to advise everyone that we need to be gearing up for Z-Day 2011. Okay, that's going to be an awesome couple of days, it really will be. Anyway, I will plough straight on, so here we go. Question 1. Isn't it human nature to fight and be greedy? The human race has been like this since the dawn of time. We've always fought with each other and hoarded and abused our environment. This just goes to show that we are a self-destructive species, and there's nothing that's going to change that. How can you propose that this system will work when it's been in our nature to be destructive, greedy, and selfish? Okay, a very good question actually, and not surprisingly, a very common one. Typically, that was most probably why the first 40 minutes of Zeitgeist Moving Forward was dealing with this kind of hurdle, so I will address it here. When it comes to human nature, I have a fundamental disagreement. However, first, let's examine the notion of human nature. Typically, when people talk about human nature in this respect, they're referring to the unchanging discourse observed in the dominant value systems, i.e. rampant materialism, selfishness, hostility, aggression, self-destructive attitudes, greed, apathy, social stratification, etc. When you look at this list, you notice that this formula is the best formula of behavior to benefit the monetary market system. Now, other systems of human operation are not so benefited by this set of dominant values. But our current system, yeah, that fits nicely now, doesn't it? Now, just take a moment to consider that when thinking about capitalism. Does the term self-fulfilling prophecy come to mind at all? Because believe me, it should. This set formula of behavioral attributes applies to all humans, right? Hence the maxim human nature. Then how come if you look at differing cultures and settlements across the planet, you notice that a vast diversity in the values, beliefs, perspectives, and societal standpoints held by people? When you study the behavior and values of other cultures and people, this previously mentioned template of human nature does not apply, does it? If it were in fact true that it is in our nature to behave violently, greedily, selfishly, materialistically, and self-destructively, then how come we see no evidence whatsoever of this being reflected identically all over the world? Why don't we see identical behavioral patterns displayed by people living in different social systems? Why do we never hear of serial killers in egalitarian tribes in Tahiti, for example? I've actually asked quite a few people this question, and generally, besides wanton insults, which I expect, I generally get the response to the effect of, well, it's obvious that it can be programmed in and out of people. Exactly. We are creatures of conditioning. We as human beings are capable of anything given sufficient conditioning. I'll give you two examples of extremes of human behavior, okay? Serial and mass murderer, and choosing a life of pacifism. There's another example, serial rape and choosing a life of celibacy. We have vast potential for diversity of behavior, mainly because we are extremely malleable by our environment. I once heard someone say, in a documentary, I think it was, or a film, I can't remember which, but that even in the United States, the most capitalistic country in the world, there is still a great diversity. I mean, his actual words were, because everything is possible here. We have every possible evil and every possible good. Now, why do we have fields of study, research and treatment such as psychology, psychiatry, neuroscience, etc., that are there to examine the root causes of human behavior and shape shape it into more conducive manners? Why do we have these fields of science which cost millions upon millions every year when human nature stands in its way? Why bother rehabilitating someone with severe type A personality disorder when it is in our nature to be greedy, materialistic, and selfish? The fact that we are capable of everything possible in the spectrum of possible human behavior shows that even if there were such thing as human nature, then it doesn't really hold much sway, to be completely honest, does it? Now, you say in your question that we have always been this way, but does that dictate that our behavior over time tells of a certain nature, or is it down to the fact that there has been a condition which has caused us to act this way for so long? Well, I would agree the latter, because I can tell you what that condition is. It's known as scarcity. For all of humans' existence, we have lived within scarcity. There has never been enough to go around, and as a result, just like what we witness with the animal kingdom, social stratification develops as a coping and management mechanism. Now, granted, I would agree that if any kind of nature applies to any idea of us being stratified or hoarding and alike, I would only say this exists within the context of when we live within scarcity. I would agree that it is natural for any form of life that has at least rudimentary intelligence and mobility to develop social stratification and hoarding behaviors, but only when there isn't enough to go around. My point is here that people argue that this is the way we will behave regardless of the social system. People say to me that we will still be greedy, selfish, materialistic, hostile, homicidal, in a system where everyone is equal and everyone is provided for in abundance by technology that serves to liberate us. Now, for one thing, both the assertion of this behaviour, this supposed behaviour, in addition to the manifestation of this supposed behaviour itself, is utterly absurd and irrational. It doesn't make sense. Now, part of this human nature thing is tied with genetics. Ever since the discovery of genes in, I think it was the mid-1800s, then people have had a new whipping boy that they could blame everything on. Because at the time of the discovery of genes, we were not educated in the ways in which they changed, or the ways in which we can manipulate them. So, from the outset, we were presented with this unchanging set of blueprints that apparently seems to govern everything about us. So, understandably, in order to devise an explanation for the sheer savage, inhumane, irrational, and destructive things that we do, we have devised the argument, it's genetic. However, after actually doing my homework on this, I've realised that instead, people should be saying something along the lines of, it's possibly epigenetic. Epigenetics is essentially the study of how genes can be turned on and off, mainly by environmental stimuli. You see, genes are not autonomous initiators of commands. They don't govern anything about our behaviour. All they do is manage the release of certain hormones and proteins. That's all. Now, granted, a person may have a genetic propensity towards violence, say. However, that in of itself does not make them violent, okay? It takes an environmental stimulus, for example, an insult or an injury, or something that causes that particular respective gene to switch on or off, and release a chemical which in turn enables the person to be violent. Now, in the context of human nature and epigenetics, there's a lot of research you can do. I would personally recommend the work of Dr. Garber Marte. He also featured in Zeitgeist Moving Forward. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can look up about this. Now, with all this said, what weight does genetics have when thinking about our behaviour? What allows its development? What stimulates and manifests it? The genes have little to no influence at all here. So, as Dr. Garber Marte himself said, the genetic argument is really just a cop-out. And I would also extend that to the human nature argument, which has been birthed from this genetic argument fallacy that is a cop-out as well. So really, it's a cop-out within a cop-out. Because when you think to yourself that everything negative in this world is because of some immovable genetic wiring or inescapable human nature, then it enables you to relax. It enables you to stop thinking. Because why wish something to change when it never can, you know? So you see, from there it arises a form of what I call intellectual laziness, where people are clutching at straws in regards to their scapegoats, and genetics seems to be one of the main ones. You see, when people have established a scapegoat, then they have their blame already firmly placed, and it was easy for them to do so as well. So yeah, double trouble. I mean, but the real trouble here is not only the hasty nature of finding an easy scapegoat, but also when they are proven wrong. They prefer to cling to their established blame association than consider anything else, because of course considering anything other than what they have slapped the finger of blame on is dangerous to their mindset. Don't forget, people have a near pathological fear of being proven wrong, and being proven wrong is erroneously construed with inferiority and failure. So anyway, back to the point, Adam. The hasty grabbing of the genetic scapegoat is what stops people from having to think, namely about whether the system itself has any hand in this. When we think about things in these terms, we begin to realize that the system we have now is in fact the generator of all the negative, paradoxic, hostile, greedy, destructive and selfish behaviours you see around you. But then again, people say, oh, but it can't be the system, it must be in our genes, in our nature. It's what people have been told their whole life, and they just repeat it. I'm sorry, but that's just rubbish, okay? Anyway, moving on. Question 2. If mankind is provided with an abundance, and machines do everything, then people will no longer have any motivation to do anything. Money is what provides this motivation, because otherwise nothing will be done. Okay, well, this is a question of incentive then, isn't it? Now, for most of our lives, we've been told that the motivation for mankind to do something comes at a price, right? Well, that is only what we're told, but is it true? I've found that it couldn't be further from the truth, actually. Imagine for a moment that you are an infant once more. You live to explore, even beyond the boundaries of where you are allowed. You are inexorably curious, not just about your environment, but also about your body. You spend every waking moment having your attention, fixed on one element of your environment and then another, sometimes in rather quick succession. If something becomes the slightest bit boring, you move on. Sounds and images are what catch your attention, and their interest either holds or fails to hold your attention.